The morning sun painted Miami Beach in golden hues as Lionel Messi stepped onto the warm sand, his feet sinking slightly with each step. He'd been trying to make these morning walks a habit since moving to Miami, finding them perfect for clearing his mind before the day's training. The beach was relatively quiet at this hour, with just a few early joggers and families setting up their colorful umbrellas for the day ahead. Wearing simple black shorts and a light blue t-shirt, Messi looked like any other beachgoer, except for the occasional whispers and double takes from people who recognized him. He smiled warmly at a group of kids playing soccer nearby, reminded of his own childhood days when the ball was his constant companion. The sea breeze carried the salty air around him as he walked along the shoreline, occasionally letting the warm waves wash over his feet. He'd grown to love these peaceful moments in his new home city. Miami was different from Barcelona and Paris, more laid back, yet vibrant in its own unique way. The palm trees swayed gently overhead, and seagulls soared through the cloudless sky. As he reached the curve of the beach where the local coffee shop stood, something caught his attention. A growing crowd was gathering near the volleyball nets, their excited chatter and the flash of phone cameras creating a familiar scene he knew all too well. But it wasn't until he heard someone shout Ronaldo that his curiosity piqued. Sure enough, there stood Cristiano Ronaldo, his longtime rival on the field, wearing designer sunglasses and board shorts, surrounded by eager fans. He was graciously taking selfies and signing everything from beach balls to water bottles, that famous smile never leaving his face. Ronaldo was supposedly on vacation, taking a break from his matches in Saudi Arabia. The sight was surreal. Two of soccer's greatest legends, who had spent years competing for titles and records, now randomly meeting on a Miami beach, thousands of miles from the roaring stadiums where their rivalry had played out. Messi watched as a young boy, wearing a Barcelona jersey, spotted him and stopped dead in his tracks, his ice cream cone nearly slipping from his grip. Word spread across the beach like wildfire. Messi's here too. No way. Both of them. People began emerging from under their umbrellas, and swimmers made their way out of the water, drawn by the incredible coincidence. The morning peace transformed into an atmosphere of excitement and anticipation. Ronaldo hadn't noticed him yet, busy chatting with a family who'd asked about his recent match. Messi could see his rival's genuine enthusiasm as he demonstrated a technique to their young son, who watched with wide-eyed wonder. It was these moments, away from the pressure and spotlight of professional matches, that showed the true love both of them had for the game. A cool breeze swept across the beach, carrying a stray beach ball that rolled right to Messi's feet. As he picked it up, he caught Ronaldo's eye, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. The crowd held their breath, phones raised, ready to capture whatever would happen next. Years of media-crafted rivalry, countless comparisons and endless debates about who was the GOAT. All of it hung in the air between them. The sound of waves crashing against the shore filled the silence as Messi took a step forward, the beach ball in his hands. Nobody could have predicted what was about to unfold on this ordinary morning on Miami Beach. The next few moments would become one of the most talked about encounters in soccer history, all because of what Messi decided to do next. The news of both soccer legends being on the same beach spread faster than a viral tweet. People who had been peacefully lounging on their beach towels just moments ago were now speedwalking across the sand, phones held high like beacons. A group of lifeguards tried their best to maintain some order, but their efforts were as futile as trying to hold back the tide. Ronaldo, ever the showman, adjusted his designer sunglasses and straightened his posture. His vacation in Miami had been relatively low-key until now, enjoying quiet dinners at exclusive restaurants and private beach spots. But here he was, face to face with his greatest rival in the most unexpected setting. He ran his fingers through his perfectly styled hair, a habit he'd developed over years of being in the spotlight. The crowd around them had grown into something extraordinary. Two teenage boys who had been surfing dropped their boards in the sand and sprinted over. A beach volleyball game came to a complete stop, the ball forgotten mid-serve. Even the hot dog vendor wheeled his cart closer, forgetting about his sizzling sausages for a moment. Someone in the crowd started a chant, Messi. Ronaldo, Messi. Ronaldo. The rhythm caught on like a catchy summer hit, with more people joining in until it echoed across the beach. A flock of seagulls took flight, startled by the sudden explosion of noise. The atmosphere was electric, like a stadium on match day, but with sand between everyone's toes and the ocean as the backdrop. Phones were everywhere, recording every moment. A kid sitting on his dad's shoulders got the perfect view, his ice cream dripping unnoticed down his arm as he watched in awe. Someone's grandmother, who claimed she'd never watched a soccer match in her life, found herself right in the front row of the growing circle, completely captivated by the unfolding scene. The two legends hadn't crossed paths since their last epic battle in Saudi Arabia, where they'd left everything on the field in a display of skill that reminded the world why they were considered the greatest. But this was different. There were no referees here, no whistles, no scoreboard. Just two men who had spent their lives pushing each other to greater heights, standing on a beach in Miami of all places. Ronaldo's confident smile masked his curiosity about what would happen next. He'd always respected Messi's skills, though he'd rarely shown it publicly. Their rivalry had helped both of them achieve things in football that seemed impossible. Now, as he watched Messi holding that stray beach ball, 1,000 memories flashed through his mind, all the penalties, the celebrations, the heartbreaks, and the triumphs. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. A little girl clutched her father's hand and whispered, "Are they going to play?" Her innocent question echoed what everyone was thinking. The crowd had formed a perfect circle around them, like a natural stadium made of flip-flops and beach umbrellas. Time seemed to slow down as Messi took another step forward. The waves crashed rhythmically against the shore, providing a soundtrack to this historic moment. Nobody dared move, afraid to break the spell that had fallen over this small patch of Miami Beach. Even the usually chatty group of local joggers stood in silence, their morning routine forgotten. The world held its breath, waiting to see what would happen when these two titans of the sport came face to face, not on the manicured grass of a professional pitch, but on the warm sands of Miami Beach. Little did anyone know, they were about to witness something that would break the internet and change how fans would view this legendary rivalry forever. The beach had become as quiet as a soccer stadium just before a penalty kick. Everyone watched as Messi took 3 slow steps toward Ronaldo, the beach ball tucked under his arm. The only sounds were the gentle waves and the distant cry of seagulls overhead. Even the kids who had been playing nearby stood frozen, their own soccer ball forgotten in the sand. What happened next left everyone stunned. Messi, still walking forward, broke into the warmest, most genuine smile anyone had ever seen. He extended his right hand toward Ronaldo, not in the usual professional handshake way, but as a friend would. "Why don't we give them something to really talk about?" he said, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. Ronaldo's expression shifted from surprise to curiosity. He'd spent years competing against this man, chasing the same records, fighting for the same trophies. The media had always painted them as bitter rivals, two giants who could never be friends. But here was Messi, breaking down those walls with a simple gesture. A young boy in the crowd tugged on his mom's sleeve. "What's happening?" he whispered, loud enough for those nearby to hear. His mother shook her head, just as amazed as everyone else. This wasn't in any script, wasn't part of any marketing campaign. It was real, raw, and completely unexpected. Messi went even further. He tossed the beach ball to a nearby kid and pulled out his phone. "Hey, want to take a real selfie? Not for the media, not for sponsors, just for us." The crowd gasped. This was Messi, known for being private and reserved, making the first move to bridge a gap that had existed for over a decade. Ronaldo's famous confidence melted into something more genuine. He laughed, not his media-ready laugh, but a real one that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "You know this will break the internet, right?" he replied, already reaching for his own phone. "Let's do it. But first," he waved over the kid with the beach ball. "I think these people deserve a show." The tension in the air transformed into pure electricity. Phone cameras clicked frantically as the two greatest players of their generation stood side by side, not as rivals, but as fellow legends of the game. A small girl perched on her father's shoulders squealed with delight. "They're friends now," she announced to everyone and no one in particular. An older man in the crowd, wearing a faded soccer jersey from the 90s, wiped a tear from his eye. He'd watched both their careers from the beginning, and this moment felt like watching his own children finally make peace after years of competition. This wasn't just a photo opportunity, it was a moment of pure sports history. Messi and Ronaldo posed for their selfie, then turned to take photos with the crowd. But it wasn't the staged, distant kind of photos they usually took at events. These were casual, fun, and real. They made funny faces with the kids, flexed muscles with the teenagers, and shared genuine laughs with the parents. The beach had transformed from a place of tension to a celebration of the beautiful game. As the sun climbed higher in the Miami sky, casting sparkles across the ocean, everyone present knew they were witnessing something special. This wasn't just about two soccer players taking pictures together, it was about showing the world that even the greatest rivals could choose friendship over competition. The unthinkable wasn't a trick or a challenge, it was a simple act of humanity that would change how fans viewed both players forever. The real magic, though, was in what happened next, as these two legends decided to take their unexpected friendship one step further. What happened in the next 15 minutes on Miami Beach would be talked about for years to come. The crowd had naturally formed a large circle, creating a makeshift soccer arena on the sand. Someone had brought over several beach chairs to mark out a small playing area, and the excitement in the air was thick enough to touch. Messi rolled up the sleeves of his light blue t-shirt, while Ronaldo removed his designer sunglasses, carefully handing them to a beaming teenager who looked like he'd just been given the crown jewels. The beach ball they'd been using earlier was swapped for a proper soccer ball that a local street vendor ran to get from his car, refusing any payment with tears in his eyes. "Ladies first," Ronaldo joked, gesturing to Messi with a playful smirk. The crowd erupted in laughter, and Messi responded by flicking the ball up with his foot and catching it on the back of his neck. A trick that made everyone gasp. Not to be outdone, Ronaldo did his signature spin move, even without the ball, drawing cheers from his fans. What followed was nothing short of magical. Messi started with the ball, performing his famous close-control dribbling, his feet moving so fast they seemed to barely touch the sand. The ball appeared glued to his feet as he danced around in circles, each touch perfect despite the uneven surface. Then, with a gentle flick, he sent the ball flying toward Ronaldo. Ronaldo, showing off his incredible athleticism, leaped into the air and caught the ball with his chest, letting it roll down to his feet without touching the sand. The crowd went wild. A group of young boys watching nearby tried to copy his movement, falling into the sand with laughter as they failed. The two legends began passing the ball between themselves, but this wasn't any ordinary passing drill. Each touch was a trick, each move a display of their incredible skill. Messi would roll the ball up his leg, flick it over his head, and Ronaldo would catch it with a backheel pass. Their movements became synchronized, like two dancers performing a perfectly choreographed routine. The crowd's phones were up, recording every second, but most people found themselves lowering their devices, wanting to watch with their own eyes rather than through a screen. A little boy sat cross-legged in the sand, his mouth hanging open in pure amazement. His ice cream cone melted, dripping onto his swimsuit, but he didn't even notice. At one point, Ronaldo performed his famous around-the-world trick, but instead of keeping the ball, he flicked it toward Messi, who caught it mid-spin with his own trick. The beach erupted in cheers. An older couple who had been watching from their beach chairs stood up to applaud, the husband turning to his wife saying, "In all my years of watching football, I've never seen anything like this." The performance reached its peak when both players started including the crowd. Messi would flick the ball to kids in the circle, who would try their best to pass it back, while Ronaldo encouraged them with genuine cheers. One young girl, barely tall enough to reach Messi's waist, managed to head the ball back to him, earning a high five from both legends. The sun had climbed higher in the sky, and both players were now covered in a light sheen of sweat, their feet covered in sand, but their smiles never faded. They weren't two rivals trying to outdo each other anymore. They were two masters of their craft, sharing their joy for the beautiful game with everyone present. As their impromptu performance continued, people walking by on the beach boardwalk stopped to watch, drawn by the commotion and staying for the magic. The crowd had grown so large that someone joked they could have sold tickets. But this wasn't about money or fame. It was about two legends breaking down barriers and showing the world what soccer was really about: joy, skill, and bringing people together. The real surprise, though, was still to come, as both Messi and Ronaldo had one final trick up their sleeves that would make this beach performance truly unforgettable. The Miami sun was now high in the sky, but nobody on the beach seemed to mind the heat. What happened next showed everyone a side of these soccer superstars that no camera had ever quite captured before. After their amazing display of tricks, both Messi and Ronaldo looked at each other and nodded, seeming to share the same thought without speaking a word. Ronaldo cupped his hands around his mouth and called out to the crowd, "Who wants to learn some soccer?" The response was immediate. Dozens of hands shot up into the air, waving frantically like palm trees in a hurricane. Kids jumped up and down, parents nudged their shy children forward, and even a few adults raised their hands with hopeful grins. Messi started by gathering a group of young kids around him. He sat down right there in the sand, not caring about his clothes, and began showing them how to properly position their feet for ball control. The sight of the world's greatest player sitting cross-legged in the sand, patiently teaching basic skills to beginners, made several parents reach for their phones, though their hands were shaking with emotion. Not to be outdone, Ronaldo gathered his own group. "The first thing," he said with a warm smile, "is to believe in yourself." He demonstrated his famous step-over move, but broke it down so simply that even the youngest kids could follow along. When a tiny boy in oversized swimming shorts managed to copy the move, Ronaldo celebrated as if the kid had just scored in a World Cup final. The beach had transformed into the world's most extraordinary soccer school. Here was Messi showing a group of giggling kids how to do his signature body feint, while Ronaldo taught another group the proper way to strike a ball. They kept things simple and fun, mixing in jokes and encouragement with every lesson. A heartwarming moment came when a young girl with a leg brace stepped forward, looking nervous. Both legends immediately walked over to her. Messi gently showed her how to control the ball while staying balanced, while Ronaldo demonstrated some tricks she could do while sitting down. The girl's face lit up brighter than the Miami sun, and her parents watched with tears in their eyes. The crowd's phones were capturing everything, but this wasn't about social media likes or viral videos. This was about two of soccer's greatest rivals coming together to share their love of the game with a new generation. A grandfather in the crowd was overheard saying to his grandson, "Remember this day, son. This is what sports is really about." As the impromptu training session continued, both players made sure every kid got attention. They high-fived successes, encouraged after mistakes, and shared little tips that they'd learned over their decades in the sport. When one boy apologized for not being very good, Messi told him, "I was smaller than you when I started, and not very good either. The secret is to never stop trying." Someone had brought water bottles for everyone, and during a short break, both players shared stories from their early days. Ronaldo talked about practicing with a deflated ball in Madeira, while Messi described playing in the streets of Rosario. The kids listened with wide eyes, seeing these superstars not as distant icons, but as real people who had once been just like them. Parents were amazed at how both players seemed to forget about time, fame, and their supposed rivalry. They were just two guys who loved soccer, sharing that passion with anyone willing to learn. A mother wiped tears from her eyes as she watched her usually shy son laugh out loud while trying to copy Messi's dribbling. The scene was better than any commercial or planned event could ever be. It was raw, real, and touched everyone present in a way they hadn't expected. Social media was already exploding with videos of the event, but the real story was in the faces of the kids and the genuine joy of two legends who had put aside their rivalry to become teachers for a day. As the session began winding down, Messi and Ronaldo had one final surprise planned, something that would make sure these kids never forgot this magical morning on Miami Beach. As the afternoon sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, casting a golden glow across Miami Beach, something remarkable was about to happen. The crowd had thinned slightly, but those who remained were about to witness the perfect ending to an already magical day. Messi and Ronaldo gathered everyone together, their clothes and hair covered in sand, but their faces showing nothing but pure joy. The two legends looked more relaxed than anyone had ever seen them, like old friends at a beach party rather than fierce competitors. Ronaldo had long forgotten about his designer sunglasses, and Messi's usual shyness had completely disappeared. "Before we finish," Ronaldo announced, his voice carrying across the crowd, "we want to do something special." He reached into his beach bag and pulled out two jerseys, one from his current Saudi team and one from his Manchester United days. Messi followed suit, bringing out an Inter Miami jersey and his iconic Argentina World Cup shirt. The crowd buzzed with excitement, wondering what was coming next. What followed left everyone speechless. The two players began signing not just their own jerseys, but each other's as well. They added personal messages, little jokes, and even drew small pictures. Then, they asked the young girl with the leg brace and the tiny boy who'd mastered Ronaldo's step-over to come forward. The crowd held their breath as both players presented these kids with the signed jerseys. But that's not all, Messi said, his voice softer but full of warmth. They had arranged with local soccer coaches who were present to set up free weekend training sessions for any kids who wanted to learn more. The coaches, who had been watching in amazement all morning, couldn't believe they would be working with kids inspired by this incredible moment. Parents were openly crying now, not just because of the jerseys or the training sessions, but because they had seen two of the world's biggest sports rivals show their children what true sportsmanship looked like. A father hugged his son tightly, whispering, "See, this is why we love this game." The beach vendor who had provided the soccer ball earlier tried to refuse when both players insisted on signing it, but they wouldn't take no for an answer. "Keep it here on the beach," Ronaldo suggested, "so other kids can play with it too." The vendor hugged the ball like it was made of gold, promising to share it with everyone who visited his stretch of beach. As the crowd began to disperse, Messi and Ronaldo posed for one final photo together. Their arms were around each other's shoulders, their smiles genuine, and their feet planted firmly in the sand. It wasn't a staged photo op. It was two legends who had finally shown the world that their rivalry had always been about pushing each other to be better, not about hatred or jealousy. The photo went viral within minutes. Sports channels around the world interrupted their regular programming to show clips from the beach. Social media exploded with hashtags like #MiamiMiracle and #MessiRonaldoPeace. But the real story wasn't in the viral videos or trending hashtags, it was in the hearts of everyone who had been there. A young boy tapped on his mother's hand as they were leaving. "Mom," he said thoughtfully, "I always thought I had to pick between being a Messi fan or a Ronaldo fan. But today, they showed us we can admire both, right?" His mother smiled, realizing that her son had learned something more valuable than any soccer trick. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Both players gathered their belongings, exchanged phone numbers, much to everyone's surprise, and made plans to stay in touch. As they walked away in different directions, a small group of kids started a pickup game with the signed ball, trying to copy the moves they'd learned. The Miami Miracle, as it came to be known, didn't just break the internet, it broke down barriers that had existed for years. In the days that followed, fan groups from both sides shared messages of unity and respect. Sports shows talked about it as a moment that transcended soccer, and parents used it as a lesson in humility and sportsmanship. But perhaps the most beautiful thing was what happened in parks and beaches around the world in the weeks that followed. Kids who watched the videos online started organizing their own friendly games, mixing teams of Messi and Ronaldo fans together. The rivalry that had divided fans for years had transformed into something beautiful, a reminder that at its heart, soccer was about bringing people together, not pulling them apart.